Hello, Mrs. Pierce here. Let's talk about solving equations some more. Okay, you should have a piece of paper out for notes. If you have a toolkit or a notebook, then you should write these down. And so before you listen to me explain these, why don't you pause this and copy those down now? Did you pause it? Are you done copying? Okay, I am going to assume now that you've already copied them down and you're watching it again. So step number 1, drop a line. This is nothing mathematical, only a Mrs. Pierce thing. I like to draw a line down my page where my equal sign is because that reminds me that I've got two sides to my equation, a left side and a right side, okay? And that's really important. Third step says get the second step, my bad. So first step, drop a line. Second step, we're going to simplify each side. So when I simplify, I am only looking at one side at a time. And I notice here on the left, I have a 5x and I have a 3x. And so I am going to just combine like terms. I don't need to do the same thing to both sides because I'm not really doing anything except for combining them together. So I have 8x plus 2. And when I look on the right side, there is no like terms. There's no parentheses, so I am just going to rewrite what I have. When you do algebra, I know at the beginning, teachers give you problems that turn out nice and pretty. A lot of you can do it in your head. But you need to get used to being neat, showing every step, because later they're going to get a lot more complicated. All right, so I've simplified each side. Now it's time to start solving. The third step says I need to get my variable terms on one side and my constant terms on the other side. Just so you know, variable terms are terms with variables. So 8x is a variable term, 4x is a variable term. The constant terms are the one without variables. So I've got a positive 2 and a negative 10. So now I'm going to use a different color while I start doing it. I'm going to add the opposite. It does not matter if you get the variables on the left or the right, and it does not matter which you decide to start with, okay? I personally like to start with my x's first. And so in my head, I look at the 8x and I look at the 4x and I'm like, okay, self, if I added a negative 4x to both sides, I would still have positive x's, though you don't have to have positive x's, but I like to think ahead. So now I've got 4 x's on my left when I do the math. I still have a plus 2. And on the right, I have a negative 10. Please be really careful because you see that negative sign, that minus sign, it really needs to be dropped down to make that a negative 10. All right, so now I have my variables on the left, on one side, which means I need to do the opposite of a positive 2 to both sides. So I am going to add negative 2 to both sides. That leaves me, those guys cancel out, I have 4 x's on my left, and a negative 10 and a negative 2 ends up being negative 12. Okay, so great, now my first step is done, second step is done, third step is done. My last step in solving is to divide, most of the time you're going to divide, by the coefficient of the variable. In this case, the coefficient is 4, so I'm going to divide by 4. Notice I write it like a division or like a fraction, because that's really division. And so then in my calculator, or in your head, you can do negative 12 divided by 4, because 4 divided by 4 should always equal 1. And my final answer is 1x, and I don't need to write the 1, equals negative 3. Final answer. But the last step is to check my answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to put it everywhere that there was an x on either side, okay? And I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to just do 5 times negative 3 plus 3 times negative 3 plus 2. And when I do that, on the left-hand side, I get negative 22. All right, on the right-hand side, I'm going to do 4 times negative 3 minus 10. And guess what? I got negative 22 as well. So that means that, yes, my answer is correct. Okay, let's move on for another example. So I left the steps. I know they're kind of sideways, but that's the best way I could see to fit. I'm going to go through this really quickly. You may pause this and rewind it as many times as you need to. So first step, I'm going to drop a line where my equal sign is. Second step, I need to simplify each side, and this time notice that there is some parentheses here, okay? So I've got parentheses, and in front of the parentheses is a minus sign, not a number. It's a minus sign. So really what's going to happen is I'm going to take this minus, and it's kind of like I am distributing it to everything inside. And when I do that, the 2x was not part of that, so that's still there. The 6 inside of the parentheses here, inside the parentheses, that is a positive 6. So now it is going to become a minus 6. And then inside of the parentheses, this 3 was a negative 3. So now it's going to become a plus 3x equals x plus 18. I notice on the left-hand side, look, I still have like terms, so I'm not done simplifying. And when I combine them, I get 5x minus 6 equals x plus 18. See that minus sign there? This minus sign does not go with the 2x. This minus sign only goes with the 6, just FYI. All right, now I am done simplifying. I am on to step number 3. Again, it does not matter which you want to deal with first. In fact, this time I'll deal with the constant terms first because last time I dealt with the x's. So I'm going to add a 6 because I noticed that it's easier for me to add than to subtract. So I'm adding 6 to both sides. And when I do that, I end up with 5x equals x plus 24. And now I need to do a minus x or a negative x to both sides. So that leaves me with 4x equals 24. Last step, divide by the coefficient of x. It just happens to be 4 again this time. And I get x equals 6. I am going to take that 6 and I am going to plug that 6 into, whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to plug that 6 into this x right here, this x right here, and this x right here. And if it is correct, I should get the same number on both sides. So in my calculator, I am doing 2 times 6 minus parentheses 6 minus 3 times 6, close my parentheses, equals, and I get on the left-hand side 24. On the right-hand side, 6 plus 18, well, I don't really need to do that, is 24. Since that works, my answer of 6 is correct. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, one more. I am going to, step 1, drop my line. And step 2 says simplify each side. Well, if you notice, there is no parentheses, no like terms on the left, no parentheses, no like terms on the right, so I am good to start solving. I am going to deal with my x's first because that's just what I like to do. I'm going to subtract 3 halves x from both sides. Notice they're fractions. That's okay. Fractions are numbers too. Don't hurt their feelings. But I'm going to use my calculator. There's no harm in that. So 1/5. I can't put x in the calculator, but I can put the coefficients in there. 1/5 minus 3 halves ends up being -1 and 3/10. I am going to keep it, though, like a improper fraction. So I'm going to say that is -13/10 x plus 13 equals -12. Once again, remember that is a -12. Don't forget that minus sign. Now I am going to subtract 13 from both sides, or add a -13 to both sides so that they cancel out, leaving me with -13/10 x on the left and -25 on the right. So now I've got an option. I can divide both sides by -13/10 because I have a calculator. Or if I really wanted to, I'll do it in pink to show you, I could multiply both sides by -10/13. Okay, so totally your choice. Since I have a calculator, I will just divide. So it depends on whether or not you're allowed to use a calculator. Let me see if I can erase this to not confuse you. So in my calculator, I am going to do -25 divided by -13/10, and I'm going to get as a final answer with my calculator x equals 19 and 2/3. Oh, sorry. 19 and 3/13. How crazy is that? But guess what? We've got technology. It doesn't matter how crazy the answers are. Okay, I'm not going to check it just for sake of time right now. Let's move on to the next question. You might be saying, this does not look very crazy, and it's not. I'm going to drop my line. I already have the x's on the left. There is no parentheses. There's no simplifying. So I am going to just do a -3 to both sides, because that's the only thing I need to do to get my x's on one side and the non-x's on the other side. Now here's where some people are like, what? I don't know what to do. This is really like a -1x. So I just need to divide both sides by -1. Because my answer always has to be a +1x, and so then my final answer is -7. Now here's how I check this. When it's a negative x, basically I'm going to get rid of that x and put in a -7. Look what happens here. I've got a negative and a negative. What's a minus and a negative, or two negatives, really make a positive? And so then +7 plus 3 really does equal 10, so it is the right answer. Again, not really a very complicated problem. I'm going to drop my line. Notice there's no parentheses, there is no like terms, and I do already have my x terms on the left and my non-x terms or non-variable terms on the right. It looks a little different because it looks like x over 7. This is really like a division problem here, okay? The opposite of dividing is just multiplying. So if I multiply both sides by 7, these guys cancel out. That just becomes a giant 1. And I get that x equals -35. Final answer, if I was going to check it, -35 here divided by 7 is equal to -5, so it is good. All right. One more problem before I let you try some on your own. If you want to, you may gladly pause this and try it yourself and then see if you're right. There is no harm in that. So go ahead and pause if you want. If not, keep on listening. I am going to distribute because remember my first step, well, actually, drop a line. There we go. Now I'm going to simplify each side. I see the parentheses on the left plus some other stuff, but let's do that first. That gives me 12x plus 3. Don't forget to do 3 times 1. And then this plus 5 is out there by itself. And then on the right, I still have 5x plus 20. Nothing changed there, but I'm still going to write it. And then on the left, look, I still have like terms here. I have a +3 and a +5. So when I combine like terms to finish simplifying, that gives me with 12x plus 8. And then on the right, again, I'm just going to recopy it to keep everything nice and neat and lined up. All right, so step 2 is done. Now I need to get my variable terms on the left. And, well, I like to get them on the left. You know what? Let's get them on the right this time. So let's do that. So I'm going to add a -12x just for fun. As long as I do the same thing to both sides, it does not matter. Those will cancel out, leaving me with 8 on the left. And 5 minus 12 is -7x plus 20. So since I have my variables on the right, now I need to do a -20 to cancel out my constant term on the right and get them on the left. Same thing to both sides. That leaves me with -12 equals -7x. Divide both sides by the coefficient of x. Now, here's the deal. You've got an option. X, the -7's cancel out, no problem. And then you can either leave that as 12/7, and it would be positive because a negative divided by a negative is always positive, or you can use your calculator and actually divide it. And if I use my calculator, it's going to be a crazy answer, so I would, I would just round it to 1.7, okay? So either of those would be okay. Again, for sake of time, I'm not going to check it, but you would just plug x in wherever their x is. So now I would like you to pause it, try these problems, and then go ahead and just check and see what the answer is. Make sure you're right. Okay, I'm going to assume that you already paused it and that you did your problems. Drop a line, combine like terms, that gives me -3x plus 11 equals 2x minus 4. Getting my x's on the left, just because I feel like it. That leaves me with negative 5x plus 11, it's a plus, equals negative 4. Don't forget about that negative. Now I am going to do a negative 11 to both sides to cancel those out, leaving me with negative 5x equals negative 15. Hey, it's going to turn out pretty. Divide both sides by negative 5. Sorry about my sloppy handwriting. And my final answer is going to be a positive 3. And if you check it, it should be the right answer. Number 2, drop a line. On the left, I notice there's some parentheses, so I am going to distribute that negative sign, leaving me with 4x plus 3, because a negative times a negative is positive, and then minus 2x, because I have a negative and a positive, so that's minus. And on the right, I still have x minus 11. I've got some like terms here that I need to combine together. So that is going to leave me with 2x plus 3 equals x minus 11. All right, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. That leaves me with 1x plus 3 equals negative 11. Subtract 3 from both sides, or add a negative 3 to both sides, and I've got 1x equals negative 14. Guess what? There's no need for me to divide. I already have 1x, so my final answer is x equals negative 14. Last two problems. Pause it and go ahead and unpause when you are ready to see if you're right. Okay, drop a line. I see some parentheses on the left, so I'm going to distribute. 1/3 times x is 1/3 x. 1/3 times negative 6 is a negative 2. That equals 7. Add 2 to both sides, leaving me with 1/3 x equals 9. Now, some people look at that and say, oh, 1/3 of 9, that's 3. No, because we need to be dividing by 1/3. Okay, so either you can divide by 1/3 and do that in your calculator, or I could multiply by 3/1. Okay, your choice. I'm going to get rid of some of those, I think, here so as to not confuse you. Okay, so if I took 9 divided by 1/3, I am going to get x equals 27, and that would be my final answer. And then the one below it, let's drop a green line this time. I am going to need to distribute the 3, not the 2. You don't add first. Order of operations says that you have to multiply first. So that's going to leave me with a 2 plus 3x minus 15 equals 6. There's still some things here I need to combine. 2 minus 15 is negative 13. And that equals 6. I'm going to add 13 to both sides. Sorry about the sloppiness. And 3x equals 19. Divide both sides by 3. And 3 does not go into 19, so again, you have a choice. You can leave your answer as 19/3, or you can actually divide it. 19 divided by 3 is 6.3 repeating, so I'm just going to make it 6.3. I don't care the way you write it. Okay, if you have any questions, be sure to ask somebody for help.